really excited to get into the meat of tonight's conversation, which is all about what happens in an acquisition meeting. And the person that we have talking to us is an amazing person, Andrea Colvin, who's like in my pantheon of like the best editors in the business. Andrea is like me. She's been around. She's done a lot of stuff. Andrea was at quite a while ago. She was at Andrews McMeel and helped spearhead their move more into children's book publishing. She was at Lion Forge, where she published Genderqueer, which is one of the most influential graphic novels that's been published in a long time. And then most recently, she was at Little Brown, where she founded Little Brown Inc., which is Little Brown's graphic novel imprint. And she just left, I think December 31st was her last day at Little Brown, and started her own agency, Andrea Colvin Creative. So I'm really excited to have Andrea here. Andrea, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. And I also just wanted to say I see some of my agency is only like 6 weeks old, but I have some great clients, some of whom I see here, and also some of my former authors. So I just want to say I appreciate you all being on the internet in the evening time.
Yeah, in the
Um,
evening time. We all know that for me that is really tough, but I'm holding on. Yay. So, I'm gonna guess that everybody here knows what an acquisition meeting is, but maybe there's might be a few people here who don't. So maybe we could start with that, Andrea. Can you just like, what's the definition of an acquisition meeting? What is it?
Sure. And by the way, just my own housekeeping, I've made myself some notes to make sure I don't forget anything, and they're right here. So if I do that, that's what's happening. And I'm also looking at your chat. So an acquisitions meeting is in almost all cases at big and small publishers, the meeting where they decide whether they want to make an offer on a book project. Um, it's not the same as an editorial meeting, which you may have also heard of. Um, every imprint and every publisher works a little bit differently, but in most cases, an editor needs to bring your project to an editorial meeting before they go to an acquisitions meeting. An editorial meeting is a lot more sort of, I mean, it's low stakes. It's sort of like, let's discuss the pros and cons of this project. What do you all think? Should I move it on to acquisitions? Sometimes you have to have, permission from various people above you to actually bring something to an acquisitions meeting. But an acquisitions meeting is the meeting where you get the sign off to go ahead and try to get that book for your publisher.
Okay, so set the stage for us, Andrea. Like, let's imagine you're an editor and you've got a project you're really excited about and you want to bring it to acquisitions. What do you have to do to get ready for that meeting?
So the first thing you have to do, and this is something I was actually talking to some editors today about their acquisitions meeting, and this is something that I had kind of forgotten about because I was an editorial director, so I had the privilege to just decide to bring something to the acquisitions meeting, but most editors need to get permission from someone above them to even bring something to an acquisitions meeting. So they generally don't have to put materials together to do that, but if there's something they're excited about, they have to share the pitch with an editorial director, an editor-in-chief. In some publishers, they have to share it with the publisher to get permission to bring it to the meeting. So once someone has said, okay, go ahead, you can put it on the acquisitions agenda. Then you need to put together your acquisitions materials. Now, all of you have been working on your pitches, right? And putting together everything you need in your pitch. But that pitch is just one piece of what the editor has to bring to the acquisitions meeting. So they've got your pitch, and then they have two other major things. One is the P&L, and one is the acquisitions memo. So do people know what a P&L is? It stands for profit and loss, and it's you could make one with an Excel spreadsheet, but publishers have all sorts of different systems that use them. Um, and the P&L, the editor has to sort of decide, this is how many Well, first of all, this is what the price of the book is going to be, meaning the retail price. If it's a middle grade graphic novel, it's between 12.99 and 15.99, depending on the publisher. This is how much it's going to cost to make the book. In some publishers, you have to go to your production department and ask for that information. In most cases, there are sort of standard costs they use for these purposes. Um, and then this is how many we think we're going to sell in the first year, in the second year, in the third year. The editor generally does those sales projections. Sometimes they have to take them past a sales department before they get to put those in the P&L. Sometimes they can just put them in there, but you always run the risk of being in the acquisitions meeting and sales saying, no, 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 that's not going to work. So wait, I made a list of this. Um, Marketing costs, you've got to put in how much you think the marketing budget should be. That doesn't mean that you're in charge of it. The thing about the P&L is that you're essentially telling a story. I used to always say that the one thing we know for sure about P&Ls is that the actual reality of the book will not be that. It will be different. The costs will be different, the sales numbers will be different, the page count will probably be different, everything will be different. But it's a story you're trying to sell. And you sell the story of how many units you think your book will sell with comp titles. So you all have probably thought about comp titles when you're putting together your pitches, and they're titles that, you know, or they should be when you're thinking about them, that your book will sit next to on the shelf. So, if I have, a middle grade friendship story that also involves some kind of medical experience, maybe it's going to sit next to Smile, just as an example. But that is in fact a terrible example because no one can ever use Smile as a comp. But your editor is going to have to come up with sales comps. And those are books that they think your book is going to sell similarly to. Editors have access to book scan data, which the rest of us don't because it's incredibly expensive to subscribe to. So they actually know how much, we can sidebar on how much BookScan actually reports later, but they actually know how much books from other publishers have sold. So they're going to try to come up with books that sold reasonably well, but not so well that their acquisitions meeting is going to be like, yeah, you should be so lucky you're bringing the next Smile here. But even if you all are thinking of a book as sort of a sit next to your book on the shelf comp, maybe that book didn't sell the right amount for your editor to use it as a comp on the P&L. So that's sort of like a thing they've got to figure out. Coming up with comps really, it's kind of an art and it takes a while. That's the P&L. And then you're doing a memo. And the memo is different everywhere, but it will generally include, who the agent is, who the editor is, when it's coming, if it's a competitive situation, meaning are other publishers interested in it? Is it going to be an auction? And then the one that I had used most recently at Little Brown had what they called a consumer-facing strap line. A strap line is their word for a log line. I don't think anyone else uses the term strap line. And that's something that is got to be a sentence or two about what your book is and what the hook is. And then you have, a description, like a paragraph of what happens in the book. We had to say who we thought the primary retail channel was. Do we think this is going to sell in the indie market? Is it going to be a school and library pick? Is it going to sell mostly digitally, like on Amazon? When I say digitally, I mean e-tail, I guess, not like still physical books. Why that publisher should publish the book. Like, what is it about the publisher? Say I'm the editor. What is it about the publisher where I am right now that we need this book? Like, why is it a must-have? Or what is it about the book that we think could really break out? Even if, it's sort of like we're looking at like we don't know what's going to happen. It's maybe a mid-list book, but it does have these elements that could catch fire. So we have to say what those are. Um, let's see, I think and if it's going to be a high investment acquisition. Um, and we can get into that later, but that means if you're going to have to pay a lot of money for it, and then why. I think that's it.
Okay. I would like to, since you opened Pandora's box, let's talk about numbers a little bit before we get on to
Okay.
the other questions. So, before we talk about what you just said, let's talk about your sidebar with BookScan. Because I thought it was really interesting when we were talking the other day, talking about are the numbers that are in BookScan really representative of how much a graphic novel is actually selling in the market? So, talk a little bit about that.
So they're not. They're not. So BookScan, which is now owned by Circana, it used to be Nielsen and then something else. They say that they capture like 80 to 85% of the retail market. And just to back up for a minute, what BookScan purports to capture, and I guess what it does capture, are consumer sales. So the publisher sells books to Barnes and Noble, you know, and then Barnes and Noble sells them to consumers. And because the book market, unlike the direct comics market, is sold returnable, it doesn't really matter that much I mean, it does, but later on, how many books we've sold to Barnes and Noble. What we want to know is how many books have actually sold to consumers. And so that's what BookScan purports to tell us. Um, we do, a lot of indies report to BookScan, Amazon, B&N report to BookScan. I don't know who else reports to BookScan. The school and library market does not. It has its own BookScan like thing, which is similarly not that reliable. Um, but I've been an editor for a long time and made a lot of acquisitions memos and looked up a lot of comp titles. And also, I love BookScan, so I love to just look up books and see how they're selling. And looking at those numbers next to the numbers from books that I've actually published, so I know the real numbers because I know how many we sold to Barnes and Noble a year ago and how many did not come back. So those are essentially gone. I would say BookScan captures about 50% of sales. And what is really frustrating about that, and that's like on, sometimes less. Um, and I think it's less accurate when books tend to sell in lower numbers, like anything below 10,000 copies. I think it's kind of less accurate. I don't know why that is, but um, the frustrating thing about that to editors is that they're trying to tell a story with data that's half, essentially. And even though salespeople supposedly know that it's not, the right data, they're going to be like, that's the data. So, if I'm using a comp that, you know, BookScan is saying it sold 10,000, but I know it probably sold 20,000. For these purposes, it sold 10,000.
Hmm.
And so what I'm saying with that comp is that the book in this P&L, my book is going to sell 10,000, not 20,000.
Hmm. Okay, so talk a little bit about the competitive situation, if you are in a competitive situation.
Yeah, so editors hate to be in auctions. They hate to be in competitive situations. The entire sort of the operation of being an editor is to try to acquire a book for as little money as you can. Um, And now that doesn't mean that your editor doesn't want you to have all the money in the world because your editor does. Your editor loves you. They are going through a lot to get your book to an acquisitions meeting. It is a lot of work. And they only do it when they love you. And of course, they want you to be paid a gazillion dollars. But they want your book to earn out. meaning they want your book to start making money in royalties. They want you to earn back your advance. And if they acquire a lot of books that don't earn out, that doesn't look good for you as an editor. And of course, the publisher, when they look at their finances, they're like, we've made these poor decisions because we have acquired a lot of books that don't earn out. Now, sometimes they will make strategic decisions about, they'll buy a book for a lot of money that they think probably won't earn out, but they'll do it for other reasons. Maybe it has great award potential. Maybe it's saying something about, their list and how they can position their list. There are all sorts of other reasons they would do that. But if they acquire your book for a low enough advance that it earns out, and then they can acquire your next book, and your next book earns out, they can keep acquiring and publishing your books. And the win-win is that if the book sells a lot, then you get paid anyway because you're getting royalties. Now that I'm on the other side of that, knowing that many, many books don't earn out, as an agent, I want my clients to get as much money as possible up front because I know that the book might not earn out. And this is guaranteed income because you never have to pay back in advance. But you still have to be strategic about it. You don't want to have such a high advance that you really have no chance, and it'll be hard to get your next deal, basically, in those cases. I don't know if I answered that question.
I think you did. Yeah. And
Great.
just everybody, if you any questions occur to you as we are talking, you can put them in the chat and we'll get to them during the Q&A, or you can save them and ask at the end. Okay, so Andrea, are these meetings intimidating? Like who's at the acquisition meeting, and how do you feel as an editor walking in and knowing you have to present your project?
They are hands down the most intimidating meetings that you have to do as an editor working at a publisher, and everyone hates them. So you want, and they seem to be this way I mean, I've worked at a lot of publishers and I've talked to a lot of editors who work at other publishers, and that's sort of hands down what it is. In fact, if you're like a really big deal editor, then you can get these privileges where under a certain advance you don't have to bring your book to acquisition, and that's considered like you're an impressive person if you get to do that, because acquisition is so terrible that like no one wants to do it. And also it's saying to this big deal editor, we trust you. But there's always a cap on that. Um, I forgot what question I was. Oh,
Well, the
it's
other
very
question was like,
intimidating.
who's at the meeting?
Okay.
Why is it intimidating?
So it's different. They're different everywhere. I know that some publishers have these really big meetings with a bunch of imprints together, and and anyone can come to the meeting. Some of them keep them really tight, and people have to ask if they can come to the meeting. But the people who are in the meeting, who are like the participants and the speakers, will be whoever's presenting a book, generally whoever is in their boss, whoever's in charge of editorial. Um, you will have someone from, design or a creative director there. You will have publicity, marketing, sales. Sometimes you have multiple salespeople. I don't know why I'm counting off my fingers. It's not a certain number. You'll have finance, someone from finance there who generally, because someone will be like, what if we do this? And they'll have to be like, then you earn this much. Um, the publisher, there's always like a decider, like a person who's in charge at that meeting. There's generally someone in kids' books from a school and library, sales or marketing department. Hold on, I made a little list here. Sub-rights. So that's subsidiary rights, the people who will be able to sell the book in translation, which is why your editor is going to try to get world rights for it, because their publisher wants world rights so they can recoup some money by selling it in translation. And if the sub-rights person really likes it, then they'll say something like, you can add in $10,000 to the P&L, which means you're putting that in on the profit line and you've already recouped some of your advance. So that's exciting, even though it's obviously fiction and conjecture. And I think that's it. Oh, and then so do you want me to tell you how it works? And
Yes.
then you go in, you're the editor, and all these people are sitting around, and you have sent out your whole package, like a week or so before, and everyone in there has supposedly read it. Um, how much of it they've read, who knows, right? But no one will ever lie. And yeah, I mean, everyone will say they've read it. And so then you have to make this little presentation. And the presentation is not supposed to feel rehearsed, and you're not supposed to write it out and read it. You're supposed to just get in there and show, this is one of my favorite things, your passion for the project, which is a little bit messy, because publishing is a passion business, particularly trade publishing. I have worked in direct market at Lion Forge, direct market comics publishers. It's not the same at all. It's more of a business situation, but in trade publishing, they want to know that you have this vision and this passion for really, working with this, with you all, and making this the best project that it can possibly be. So you have to convey that while at the same time conveying why it's a good business decision to acquire the project. And the fact is, your editor is passionate about your project, or else they wouldn't have gone through all of this together. They wouldn't be sitting there in front of these people saying, please. Um, but publishing is a business. So it's really, you got to really, and depending on who's in the room, some people respond better to some things, some people respond better to other things. So you make your pitch, and then depending on where you are and how it works, generally all of these people get to say what they think. So where I just was at Little Round, the publisher will go around and call on people. They'll be like publicity, and publicity will say, I'm in favor, and they'll say why. And if they're good at their jobs, and the reason why has something to do with publicity, like, oh, this person has done great in the past with school visits, and we know we can tour them, and they're a great presenter. Um, or marketing will be like, the title's great, it's got a great hook, we can really do something with this. Or they have a million Instagram followers. I know we'll get to that later, but and you just sort of sit there as an editor, and you're like, please, please, please. And then it comes around, there is one decider. Um, and then they will say, okay, I think we should go for it, or I think we should pass. And that's it. You're done. You don't get to argue when they think you should pass. You just have to go and call up this author who you love and you love their work and be like, I'm really sorry. It's pretty terrible.
Okay, so actually I feel like you kind of covered some of the questions that I was going to ask. Well, the next question I have here is, what is the primary factor for why a book makes it through acquisitions? Is it numbers or is it passion? And how much is the decision based on the personal preferences of all the people in the meeting?
I'm glad you asked this one. So so I think that if you asked anyone in the meeting, they would say it's numbers. It's whether, it's a business. It's whether the book's going to make us money or not. Um, but I think that's a lie. I think it's a lot of it is personal preference. Um, and uh, and also these meetings are so unpredictable. Every editor I know has gone into an acquisitions meeting with something that they think is like a shoe-in based on every other acquisitions meeting they've been to with these same people and what they say about things just like this and what they like. And they've come out being like, you know, they said no. And I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. And people have also gone to acquisitions meetings with something where they're like, I'm just going to try my best. This is not the kind of thing they usually like, and we'll just see. And they'll get in there and people will be like, well, we should do it. We love it. So you don't know. I was talking to an editor today who said she's had projects that she was sure were going to be like easy acquisitions, and she wasn't even able to get them to the acquisitions meeting. So you kind of never know. I mean, I sat in a meeting, I guess, around season 2 or 3 of Stranger Things, where we wanted to get the D&D license, and the decider said, but nobody plays D&D. And that's just that's, I mean, people are human people, right? And they know what they know. And yeah, everyone who is in these deciding positions like really feels like they're good at picking, or they're going to let the people who know tell them the information, or they're hiring to their weaknesses so people can bring in the stuff that they don't know about. But everyone's scared to like back the wrong thing. So
Hmm. All right. So, another question that came in, I'm asking you some of these questions based on people in the community who told me what they wanted to know, which thank you to those of you who posted stuff. Um, are there different thresholds or expected P&L numbers for different projects that might have different audiences or different costs, or is there kind of like a standard?
So generally, most publishers have standard metrics. Like your P&L has to throw off X amount of profit, or the profit margin has to be X percent, or I mean, depending on the publisher, or the unit cost can't be more than this percentage of the retail price. So there's always something like that that's just like you can't just bring a P&L that's like we're losing a lot of money. So they show, but it's a great book. So there'll be metrics that you have to hit, but for different types of books, like graphic novels are really expensive to create because they are full color, um, and have to be printed in faraway places and shipped on boats. Um, so there are sort of allowances for that. Like people look at P&Ls and be like, well, graphic novel P&Ls are hard. So this one is only throwing off this much profit, but it's a graphic novel. So, we gotta take a flyer on it. So yeah, so basically both of
Hmm.
those things.
Hmm. Hmm. Got it. Actually, Aaron, you just asked in the chat, who is the decider, the publisher? And so we didn't quite hone in on that. Who is the person who's actually making the final decision?
Generally, it's the publisher or whoever that the publisher level person is. Maybe it's the group publisher, maybe, depending on, some acquisitions meetings have a bunch of imprints in them and it's just like children. So it's whoever is in charge of children's, but it'll be someone like really high up. And then if it's a certain amount of money, it's the CEO.
Yeah. Okay. I have three more questions for you, Andrea, and then we're going to
Mhm.
open up the floor to questions from people here. So this is, you alluded to this briefly earlier. How often do creators' platforms impact the decision to acquire a book?
Sometimes, I think that platforms in almost all cases, they can help, but I don't think not having a platform hurts unless it's a celebrity book and then like it's 100% about the platform. So I think having a bigger platform helps you because marketing, publishers aren't going to do it all anymore, so you're going to have to like join in and help market your own book, if you want it to be really successful. uh, so it helps to have a platform. It also always helps to have a connection with the people who are going to buy your work. um, but plenty of publishers will will take a flyer on, like, you don't, I saw someone put in the chat that their agent said that since they're not known, they can't do a book about a memoir about OCD. Um, and I very much disagree with that. I have seen lots of memoirs acquired from people who, either they didn't have a platform to speak of, or their platform wasn't even, discussed, wasn't even a question. It's about the book and how, the publisher can market the book. So, and all publishers always say you don't have to be on social media, you don't have to do all of this stuff. Um, and that's true. But it doesn't hurt unless it makes you miserable, in which case, don't do it.
All right, cool. So, how is the acquisitions process different when you have somebody who's pitching a script only, as opposed to an author illustrator or a creative team?
It's a lot harder. So when I was an editor, I did not consider script only submissions. And now that I'm an agent, I've talked to a lot of other editors about this, and most of them will consider script only submissions, but generally only if it's from an established creator, like like a name, either a name or something that someone who has a very unique perspective and like only they can do it. Um, or someone who has been really successful in prose.
Mhm.
Because it's there are different ways this goes, and I think everyone who's been a comics editor for a while has had one or more or all of these experiences where either the writer doesn't understand comics, so they don't really know how to write a comics script, and they don't know that a panel is just one action and not, not a video of multiple actions, or they ask for revisions in, say, inks. Um, or what happens is a lot of times, when you have a big name writer, you're paying them a lot of money. So you're getting a debut artist for a little bit less money. And it's someone who hasn't done a whole graphic novel before, and they either take a really long time or burn out and kind of grind to a halt, and then they're holding the author hostage, essentially. And they've written this book that's never going to get released. Um, it's just a huge lift for the editor, and they don't have to do that lift. So
Mhm.
um, it's better to connect with someone before, um, especially if you're debut.
Okay. Last question is about pitch packets.
Mhm.
So, do you have any thoughts about whether the way a pitch packet is put together matters? Like, what is it with a pitch packet that makes a difference or doesn't matter?
I think it matters very much. I think that one thing that I think is really important, particularly if you're pitching to editors who have like been around for a while, is you want to prove that you can do a whole graphic novel, and you do that by having as much finished art in the pitch packet as you can, by which I mean not a whole graphic novel, but don't give me 2 pages and then 6 pages of sketches, right? Don't like do the sketch, finish the sketches. If you want to put your best foot forward, if you can't finish the sketches for the pitch, as an editor, I'm like, well, I don't know, like, am I supposed to like give the editor as much material as you can. One thing I've been thinking about lately, that I think helps pitch packets a lot is to have a cover. Like, it doesn't have to be, obviously, it won't be the final cover, maybe not obviously, but in 99% of cases, it won't be the final cover. But just something, because people get excited to look at pretty pictures, they get excited when it looks like a book. Um, so I think that helps a lot. I think coming up with your own comp titles does help. I think having a good tagline, like trying to write your own tagline, helps because you're making it easier on your editor. Um, By the way, there's a book called Save the Cat, which is about screenwriting, which is got like this whole chapter on coming up with like the best possible log line, which I really recommend. Um, and if you've written a full script, I think that's great. And you can offer that to the editor considering it, but don't put it in the pitch packet because all the people in these acquisitions meetings don't know how to read a comic script and they're used to reading prose. And so they're not, it's going to be hard for them to understand it. And you're not going to be doing yourself any favors. And don't put script samples, you know, like I can see that you did, 6 spreads of finished sequential art with dialogue. So I know that you can write this. I don't need I don't need it typed up,
Mhm.
basically. Um, and also, hopefully this goes without saying, but your pitch packet has to have a full synopsis of the book that tells what happens and
Mhm.
how it ends.
All right. So, looks like I think we got a lot of questions in the chat. And the way I like to do it, I prefer, if possible, is I'm gonna scroll back and see if I can find the first question. Bailey or Jade, if you happen to know who was the person who asked the first question,
Oh, I
please.
got them all in a little notes
Oh,
document
okay.
here.
Because I wanted to let people ask the question themselves. So, who was the first person?
I'm gonna say, I know Keith here, he had a bunch of questions prepared before
Okay.
the uh, the lecture. So if you want to ask yours first, Keith, I do have them written down.
Can I just, before we get into that, right above Keith is Barbara Becker,
Uh-huh.
who asked, are publishers taking risks these days on books that may very well be banned? And the answer is yes, very much so. So anyway, so Keith,
Hey, yeah, I'm just wondering, are certain publishers more willing to take chances with graphic novels than others?
then other publishers?
Yeah, like do some of
Well,
them take a risk?
do you mean take a risk with graphic novels in general, or are they
No,
more
with a specific project. Like maybe
okay?
the sales projected sales figures aren't as high as they want, but let's roll the dice.
I think yeah. But I think it has a lot to do with, the project and also that publisher's position. I mean, when you have like a Scholastic Graphics who's just like printing money down in the basement, then they can afford to take a bigger risk. When you have an imprint that's just starting up, maybe not, or maybe that's the best place to be because they're trying to fill out their list and they'll take more of a risk.
Right.
So I think yes, but it's not like I can't give you a list of
No, no,
this one will and this one won't.
no. But when you approach publishers, do you do it one at a time in a list of preferred ones, or do you sort of do a mass contact at the same time?
Uh, Somewhere in between that. So when you're
Okay.
going out with a pitch, when your agent is going out with your pitch, they'll come up with a submissions list and, they'll show it to you and be like, what do you think of these? Are there any that you hate? Are there any that like are your dream publisher? And it'll be people that they think are going to connect with the work,
Mm,
and that they think are going to pay well for it. So it's not just a mass thing.
okay.
It's targeted, but it's not one at a time either,
Right. I
unless
know
you
it's
decide to do something exclusive.
right. Okay. In screenwriting, I know that if your script starts to get passed on by prodcos or studios, word spreads very quickly, and that kind of taints um, the reception at other studios later on because they know everybody's already passed on it, so maybe it's not as good as we think it is. We should probably pass too. Does that happen with graphic novels or books?
I think it happens more the other way around with books where we pass on it and then we see it's in an auction. And you're like, do I know nothing? Do I know nothing about what's working? It generally works the other way.
Can you unpass?
Uh, I mean, if something is getting competitive and you passed on it the first time as, an agent and an author, I'm not going to want to work with you. If and also, we all have some sort of honor. Like we don't want to be like, oh, well, I didn't like it, but now that, Bob over there likes it, then I'm in.
Right, right. That's fair. Okay, final question. Is there much participation from the writer in preparing a pitch that you're going to take to the meeting?
That the editor is going to take to the
No, that you
meeting.
as an agent. If say you were my agent, and you were putting together a pitch package for the meeting, how much input would you want from the writer?
So just to be clear, the agent isn't going to the meeting. So the agent is pitching something to the editor. So
Okay.
at that point, I think the agent will put something
Oh,
together and there will be a lot of participation from the writer because they want to be sure that I'm representing their work in a way they want to be represented, and I don't want to represent their work in a way that they don't want to be represented. Once it goes to the editor and the editor decides to go to the meeting, we don't know
you're out.
what's happening.
Okay, you're out of the loop then. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Thanks very much.
sure.
Great. Okay. I think Rachel might be next. Is that right, Bailey?
Yes.
Rachel, are you here? Can you unmute?
Hi.
Hi.
Um, I'm trying to find what I wrote.
Do you want me to read it to you?
Oh, I see it.
Okay.
Um, how common is it for an editor to bring to the table a book that is not in auction? Is it every other book or every once in a while or
So we don't know if a book is going to be in an auction when we first get it in. The agent doesn't send it out and say we're doing an auction for this book. That just happens if more than one publisher is interested in it. And that's a way that you decide which publisher to go to. And there are no specific rules for an auction, so it's very confusing. Agents get to do them however they want.
okay,
And most books do not go to auction.
okay.
If you have two publishers who are interested in a project, does that automatically mean that it goes to an auction?
I think it's kind of semantics. I think, most agents will be like, I'm setting a closing date, meaning like, by February 27th, I want your offers. And then I'm going to go with the best one or the one we like the most, which may not be the most money.
Hmm. Ooh, maybe you could talk a bit about that, Andrea. Like, when would it, what are the factors that might make an agent and a creator choose an offer that isn't the most money?
Well, first of all, it's always the creator that chooses the offer. The agent's job is just to present the offers to the creator and try to get the best offers possible for the creator to choose. So a lot of times a creator will really connect with an editor, and that editor will only be able to, I'm just throwing numbers around, say that editor is able to get a $75,000 offer. But they can't go up any more. But then another publisher is putting an offer for 85, maybe you'll make that, and that's going to be paid out over how many years. So maybe uh, the author will make the decision to go with the lower paying publisher because they want to work with that editor. And there are a lot of other factors like what's the marketing commitment? Is it a multi-book deal? How is it accounted? Are there going to be bonuses for awards? There's like a lot of different nitty-gritty that can affect that. But I have as an editor won auctions without being the top bidder a few times, but they can't be that far apart. I
Mhm.
mean, I don't know about any of you, but if like I'm not leaving $50,000 on the table, and I don't think any of you are either.
Yes. All right. Totally makes sense. Janna, you had a question. Are you here? Oh,
Oh
there you
yeah, I'm here. I think I'm just trying to wrap my head around like the corporate culture of them. Like, is it a sole editor going into like all of these te representatives from teams, or is it like almost a competitive culture where like all the editors are coming in with their respective books and only like two are gonna get picked? Like, is it like a day that they're like, we're
No.
acquiring books today? Like,
So it's not like a cage match or anything. So acquisitions meetings generally are set meetings that happen once a week. And if you have a book, you get your materials in by X date so that everyone has time to read it for the acquisitions meetings. There's usually a number like they'll cap it at, like if there's more than X number of projects, then the ones that are not time sensitive, meaning not in auctions, will get pushed another week. Um, and the books can be so different from each other, So like you could go to, five books could be in an acquisitions meeting and they could all get yeses or they could all get nos. So you're not competing against the other editors there.
Thanks. I had no clue. I was like, I wonder what it's like.
All right, great. Young, you're next.
Hello.
Hello.
Right.
So my question is, are the big publishers always looking for their next breakout hit? So how does like the originality of the author's voice like fit into that picture? Like are they like looking for like, the next like big hit that sells well, or are they also just leaving open for like modest sales? Like what's their goal?
That's a really interesting question. And, the easy answer is yes, they're always looking for the big hit. But what they're not always doing it right, because I was saying this, I say it all the time, but the like who knew that a book about orthodontia was going to like spawn an entire category, So, I always try to remember that the next really big thing is something that's not like anything else we've done. However, the publishing industry wants books that are like the things that have already done well because that's safer. So that's really tough. So that's one part of what the answer to the first part of your question. The second part is, yeah, publishers are buying mid-list stuff. So they nobody can publish only big hits because they don't have the money. Publishing a big hit means you got to put a lot of marketing behind it. You've got to, do different things that cost money. So everyone needs what they call a mid-list. So books that are going to chug along and sell, and people are going to be excited about them, but they're not going to be Dogman.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right. So, Knack, you asked the question. So it's unanimous or nothing? It's basically, Andrea, you were saying there's kind of like a decider at the
Mhm.
meeting.
It depends on the acquisitions meeting. I mean, I have been in meetings where no one wanted to say yes to a book, but then the decider did say yes. And sometimes the decider just used it like, oh, these four people don't like it, so I think we should pass. Um, there's no like, there's no rules.
Rachel, you had another question in the chat, and I think it is an interesting question. Do you want to ask it? Do you know or do you want me to ask it?
I was wondering if an illustrator isn't attached, and you talked about that it's not really common anymore to do this, but if an illustrator isn't attached, is that sort of talked about during the acquisition meeting or?
So usually what the editor will do, and this, I mean, this is what I always did. This actually may be different. I mean, I haven't been in every acquisitions meeting, so I don't know if this is true everywhere. But I would put in my memo, you know, three or four potential illustrators with samples of their work because I think it helps the acquisitions team imagine what it would look like. Because otherwise they're all imagining something else differently. And but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get those illustrators. What I'm just saying is that this is the vibe that I'm envisioning.
I could see it's kind of like a mood board.
Yeah, exactly. It's like my Pinterest for the book. Yeah.
All right. Gibson and Rory, I think you were next with a question.
At what point do you bring the authors in to the process of do they know they're going into an acquisition meeting before they do, generally speaking, and is it like a standard thing that they are looped in or that they aren't?
I mean, I think 100% of the time they're aware. I mean, as an editor, you want to tell the author that because you want the author to go with you, right? Like if you're so excited about this book that you're going to do all this work to take it to the acquisition meeting, you want the author to say yes. And in a lot of cases, the editor will ask for a call with the author before the meeting where, you'll get to know each other. And generally the editor will be like, if we acquired this book and I were your editor, this is the feedback I would give you, and this is how I work. And, they would ask about how you work. So that, I mean, that can also be heartbreaking if it doesn't get through the acquisitions meeting. Um, I know some editors don't have calls with authors until they know if they're going to be able to make an offer. There are different schools of thought on how to do that, but the author should always know, and their agent should tell them.
Got it. Okay, so we had Tanisha asked a question, but I think you sort of addressed it, Andrea.
Yeah.
Tanisha, did you get your question answered or did you want to ask more?
Yeah, I got it answered. Thank you. I appreciated it because when my agent said that, I was like, I don't know. I
I
had
mean, I
this like
wonder,
gut feeling.
yeah, maybe there's some other reason why your agent doesn't want you to focus on that. And that's an excuse. I mean, I don't know. I don't know I mean, I don't know all the information, but
Yeah.
I think that's not a reason
Okay.
for not focusing on it.
Thanks, because I've gone and read comps that are similar
Mhm.
with like anxiety and depression and whatnot. And I've like double checked and I'm like, they don't have a large following. Like, I mean, I've got like 1,600 or whatnot. But I'm like, okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
sure. Work on your book.
Thanks.
All right. Dell, are you here? You have a great question.
Oh, the one about full color?
Yeah, yeah. Dell, I don't know if you can unmute yourself or maybe you had to
Oh,
leave.
Dell said they're in the office.
Oh, okay, so they can't
Yeah.
talk. So Dell's question is, what can we do to make less full color books? It's really not necessary for every book, and with the success of manga, it's proof that audiences can go without color. Such a good question, Andrea.
So manga generally appeals to young teens and above. So it's kind of like a YA thing. And there are fewer um, full color books for that audience. But for younger audiences, kids are coming from picture books, which are all full color. And your book has to sit on the shelf next to all these books that are in full color. And the 8-year-olds aren't coming in with their own money and buying their book. They're asking their parents to buy it. So it looks like less of a value when it's black and white, when this other book is like bright and colorful, and it costs the same amount. So fix that and and that's where we'll be. But also, I don't want that. I want those full color books. I think they're beautiful. I mean, I don't think all YA books need to be in full color. And there's great like duotone or single tone books out there. I think First Second is doing a lot of good stuff that's not full color. Um, but I want the younger stuff to be in full color.
Janna, can I ask a follow-up question like
Hmm.
related to Dell's?
Hmm.
If you're pitching like a limited palette book, like the
Mhm.
book that I currently have on sub is two colors in black. Would they in the P like when you guys are pitching it for acquisition, would you pitch it as a book printed in plates or as a book printed in full color? And if it is a book that's going to be printed in plates, how does that change the price of the printing?
aren't, I mean, full color is also plates.
Oh, so it is still plates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were different.
There's just 4 of them, and you're asking for 3 of them, which honestly doesn't change the cost at all.
Okay.
So in your case, it's like it's an aesthetic choice.
Okay,
and
so
like
there's really
a
not a
narrative
difference in
choice.
that way.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
All right. Aaron says, can you please make celebrity books go away?
Aaron, I will say that I have done 1 celebrity book in my time, and I will never again. Never. It was one of the worst experiences I ever had. And I will not say who the celebrity. The celebrity was actually a lovely person. It's not the celebrity's fault. Or it is. I don't know. It was terrible.
So I should say it's more the celebrity picture books that are really, really bad. I do like me a nice juicy tell-all memoir by some of these celebrities.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I shouldn't make a blanket statement like that.
They are going away a little bit because it used to be that the reason you did it is because they're guaranteed sales, but because so many celebrities have them now, that the sales are less guaranteed. So it's not, they're going away a little bit, but that is a situation where the platform is very important.
Mhm.
Because in most cases, the celebrity is not writing the book, the celebrity is not drawing the book.
Mhm.
But their name is on the cover. So what does a celebrity do? They're promoting the book.
Mhm.
That makes a lot of
Okay.
sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Robbie, you have a question. A good one. Robbie, are you here? Can you unmute or do I need to ask it? All right. I don't know if Robbie cannot unmute, but I'm going to ask the question. Is it more of a turnoff or a selling point if I pitch my graphic novel as IP that expands beyond just the book? I know it's lofty, but in addition to the main book, I'm looking to expand into tabletop games, activity books, web animation, collectibles, and video games.
Turn off. But let me qualify that. Firstly, because your book publisher is in the business of publishing a book, and all of the stuff here costs a lot of money to produce, and they don't have the expertise to produce it. I have worked with creators who have a series of books, and then they have sold tabletop game rights to, the characters to someplace else, or worked with someone else to create plushies, and that's fine. And it also, and you can do that, and it does, or your agent, if they have merch rights, can help you do that. And ideally, it does build pipelines that lead back to the book, but your book publisher doesn't know how to do any of that stuff. So maybe they can sell those rights, but not they don't even really know how to sell video game rights. So I think something like that it just feels too heavy, like everything is a lot of work, and it's like, okay, it's not, maybe it's not a full turnoff, but it's definitely not a selling point that you want to make all of these things that go back to the book. The publisher just wants to make your book and have it be successful. By the way, this has nothing to do with your question, but in trade publishing, the term IP, which stands for intellectual property, they use it to mean IP that the publisher owns. There's kind of a big trend right now where editors are being pushed to come up with their own book ideas and then go out and find someone to make them so that the publisher can keep more rights. So when you say that to a publisher, that's what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm. All right, Maple, you have a really good question.
I think I have a lot of questions, but I'm gonna go with this one first. What creators' efforts or signals do publishers value most, but creators underinvest in?
Wait, what was the can you start over?
Uh,
I can.
what what creators' efforts do publishers value most, but creators happen to underinvest in?
Oh. So a lot of creators, and we're talking about people who already have book deals, are really good at, and this is kids stuff, where Kids Comics Unite, are really good at setting up school visits and going to talk to kids where they are. And publishers love that because that actually moves the needle. Like, actually, when kids meet authors, they want the book and they're excited about the book and they're excited about the author. And publishers have the capacity to set up school visits for, a few of their authors a season. So that is something that authors can definitely invest in more. And a lot of people are really good at it. So, just find those people and look at their websites and what they do. And a lot of times they're paid visits. I mean, a lot of authors make, it's like a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And my second questions that got bundled up into like 5 questions is that what does a strong internal pitch for marketing publicity look like? And what are the elements you need to hand them so they can advocate effectively? And when do you provide those materials to the editor?
So generally, the marketing and publicity people are in the acquisitions meeting, and then they're just off dealing with, the season that they're working on right now. And so 2 years later, or whenever your book is almost done and is going to the printer and you're launching it, that's when the marketing and publicity people come back in. And so generally, as an editor, you will give them as much information as you can about the book and the creator. A lot of publishers have this thing called the author questionnaire, where your editor will have you fill out all, who you know, what you like, where you want to go. Although I don't think everyone has it, but I'm not sure everyone really uses it. But I actually never had one single author fill one out in 7 years at Little Brown, and no one ever asked me for one. But that's probably different at other publishers. So I forgot what.
Like, I know
Oh,
that
what is an internal pitch? Sorry.
Oh.
So then this isn't true of all publishers, but most publishers will then make a marketing and publicity plan that they'll share with the editor for their feedback, and then the editor can share it with the author for their feedback. So once a book is acquired and it's getting printed, the publisher is going to sell it. They are going to market it. That's their job. But if there's anything like that's specific or unique or like a hook or an angle, or like you're friends with Anderson Cooper or something, that's like, those are the things you want to make sure your editor knows so they can tell marketing then. Does that answer the question at all?
Absolutely. I know a lot of authors also would spend extra on the side to create like specific package for a book. Like, oh, here's like an educational package for teachers, teacher's guide, etc. Do you think those are worthwhile in general?
I mean, I think they can't hurt, but I also think that a lot of publishers also pay to have those created for their books if they decide the book is a good candidate for it. So I think as an author, before you do anything like that, it's a good idea to, check in with what the publisher is doing or whether the publisher is going to thinks they can use that.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. Camden, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. My
Hi,
question was,
Camden.
hi, nice to see you. My question was just about the typical time period and like time frame around the acquisitions meeting. So like if an agent is bringing the book to the editor, about how long would it take between that and the acquisitions meeting? And then if there's an offer denial, how long would that take to get back to the author and the agent?
So anywhere between like 2 days and 9 months, basically. It can be pretty terrible. So, but it can also happen really quickly. I don't know if the New York Times does this article series that it's like how this book got made, but then it's always like, you know, it's like they might as well be talking about J.K. Rowling. They're like, well, she was just hanging out and she sent this in, and then everyone loved it, and then they made a book. But so you could send your book in, and people, editors will read it immediately and be like, my God, I must have it. Um, and they could really want to read it immediately, and it could take them a month and a half to get to it in their inboxes. Most editors will open something and look at it, which is why first pages, and first chapters are so important because they want to make sure it's not something that they should really jump on. And so it's either like, oh God, this is a big deal, this is going to go quickly, or they're like, okay, I like it, I like the voice, but I think I have some time here. And an agent, if they get interest from another editor, will then reach out to all the editors and be like, Betty over here is interested in it. Are you all still considering it? And then they might be like, oh, let me look at this quickly. So at my last job, my big boss, my boss's boss, is the person who acquired Twilight. And so she loves to talk about, I shouldn't say that so meanly, like she acquired Twilight, it's a big deal. So, but it was 20 years ago. But in I've heard the story and it's all very interesting. But one of the things that I think stood out to her and stood out to me is that she got it on, I don't know, like a Thursday or something. And somehow she was like traveling. So she had this time. So she was able to just sit down and read it right away. And because of that, she felt like she knew, the potential and was able to jump on it. And that does make a difference to authors, I think. Like when there's someone who, 4 days in is like, hey, I picked this up and I couldn't put it down. I'm really interested in this. I think the author is like, cool, we're gonna vibe, like we're gonna work well together. And if they're like 9 months later, like, I finally got into it and I like it, you're like, okay, like cool, this could work out and it could be great and everyone's busy, but it does, early enthusiasm makes a difference.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, Jeff, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, it's a little general, but what is selling now? And are there, apart from trends, are there projects that you find it's easier to go into an acquisitions meeting with? Um, I don't know, is that specific enough?
So what is selling now is really the question.
Yeah, pretty much.
And what is selling now are the things that are easiest to go into an acquisitions meeting with. But the problem with that is, okay, so everyone wants middle grade contemporary friendship stories, that, in the graphic novel space. And that's fine. We're still in the smile world. Um, and so those are easiest to get into into acquisitions meetings, but they're also kind of harder to sell because there are so many of them now. And so they aren't as differentiated. Um, so everyone says they're looking for them. Um, but, who knows? I mean, I think what's easiest to take into an acquisition meeting is something that is a lot like a lot of books that have sold a lot, but has its own twist.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, Liam, you said what made it a bad experience, and I think that he was referring to what you were saying, Andrea, about the celebrity book. Is that right, Liam? I don't know if
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it is.
Well, maybe Andrea, we could turn this question just a bit because I don't know if you feel like you can talk about that particular experience, but do you have any advice for all the creators here about like things to avoid making a bad experience in your work with a publisher?
Don't go AWOL ever. Respond to emails, and even if your response to the email is, I'm not done yet and I'm about to miss my deadline, that is so much better than being like, I don't have anything to tell them, so I'm not going to tell them anything. Um, do do the things that you signed the contract saying that you would do. It doesn't feel like something that one should have to say, but it's tough. And also just making a graphic novel is really hard and it takes a long time. And a lot of people think they're up for it, but it turns out that they're not really. Um, so just think about that a lot. I don't even know what question that you just asked me, Janna, because I think I just went off on a tangent.
No, I think it was good. It was good.
Okay.
All right, Shay, a good question. Are you here?
Excuse me. Hi. I was curious about hybrid books, if they are how they are to sell, if they're easier to produce, or if compared to graphic novels, if they're a heavier lift.
When you say hybrid, do you mean like Diary of a Wimpy Kid?
Sure. Yeah.
Like prose with illustrations?
Right. Right.
No, they're a lot easier because you can do them in black and white. So they're faster to make and they are easy, they cost less to print. The problem is that when Diary of a Wimpy Kid came out, everyone was doing like the diary format or, books kind of like this. So you need something unique. It can't just be like, by the way, I should tell you about myself. I'm 11 years old and I have a diary. It just needs to be, like everything you do, it's got to be something special.
Okay. I was actually also curious about color, and you'd mentioned it a little bit earlier, full color versus like a two-tone, or um, is it a cheaper, would that be an easier sell to a publisher to do something? Is it much cheaper to print something like that than it is to print in full color?
It's not that much cheaper to print in fewer tones. If you go down to 2, I think it's slightly cheaper, but it's not black and white. So that is what is actually cheaper. If you still have to print it in Asia. So that's not like a big selling point.
Got it. Thank you.
And printing costs are absolutely bananas right now. So that's cool.
Liam has a question that I think is interesting. He said, I guess putting standalone with series potential in your pitch is still a good idea. Can you say something to that about pitching a standalone title versus pitching a series?
I think putting standalone with series potential is an excellent idea. And making it actually be a standalone with series potential. So publishers are scared of series right now, and generally, sales of subsequent books in a series are lower than the one before it. Obviously, there are some series where this means nothing, but so they're and then if the first book doesn't sell that well, then they're kind of screwed because they've got to produce these full color books that they already know going in aren't going to sell a ton. So they want the first book to be a standalone. And then maybe, it'll be a competitive situation and they'll do a 2-book deal, but maybe if the first book doesn't break out, they'll want you to pivot on the second book, and not definitely have a duology. But I always think it's a good idea to put in your pitch, if it has series potential, just a couple of little paragraphs about what the next books could be about. And they don't have to be what it actually ends up being. but just to show that you have ideas. A lot of times I've been in acquisitions meetings where the team is really excited about a book and they're like, oh, should we make a 2-book offer to be competitive? And then the deciders will be like, well, but do they have other ideas? What are their other ideas? Because everyone's a little bit afraid that people are sort of like one hit wonders. By the way, I was actually in an acquisitions meeting once for the follow-up to someone's debut, and they did the debut while we were in the acquisitions meeting was on the New York Times bestseller list. And the team didn't want to do the debut. I mean, the second book, because they were like, I don't know if it's going to sell there as much as this one, which is dumb, and that's just that publisher. But things be crazy in acquisitions meetings sometimes.
All right. Aaron, good question. Do you want to ask your AI question?
Oh, yeah. I'm just wondering if there's anything that agents can do to help creators as far as artificial intelligence and keeping their IP out of, the slot machines and just protecting their IP from, ChatGPT and all these other ones that have cropped up.
Yeah, well, the good news is that publishers are in the business of copyright, so publishers really don't want that to happen. They have a vested interest in protecting authors because that is their entire business, is protecting authors and their copyrighted work. But everyone has different clauses in their contracts because publishers are also scared about like, well, what if we want to use it for marketing or what if we want to do this or do that? So publishers are always going to try to be as broad as possible in their contracts, and it's the agent's job in the negotiations to protect the client from that. Although I don't think any reputable publisher would ever want to load your work into an AI.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Advertising is a whole different situation. It's like all AI.
Young, do you want to ask your other question?
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, do you feel publishers, like some of them, might be aiming too much for low risk, high reward by underpaying their advances to authors?
I mean, different publishers have different amounts of money at their disposal. So there's that. One thing, so I've worked at small indie publishers and I've worked at big 5 houses. And the difference is, I think in small indie publishers, I had to find projects that were less fully formed because I only had so much money to pay. And so the actual operation was low risk, potential high reward. Big 5 publishers have more money, so they, I mean, I guess it's low risk, high reward in a different way because they just like don't have to put that much energy into developing something. They can sit back and sort of wait for something kind of really polished to come to them. But I also think that this is a question that comes up every so often, like what should authors be paid for a book, or how much should a middle grade graphic novel advance be, and are they paying the right advance or the advance that the author deserves? And the fact is, they're paying it's like we're in the market economy, and they're paying what they need to pay to get the book. So, or they're paying the lowest thing they can pay to get the book. And there's so many factors, the P&L, all of this stuff, who else is interested in the book that that go into this. As an editor, I have bought books for $100,000 and I've bought books for $20,000 that have sold the same.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah. The thing to keep in mind is everyone is just making educated guesses. No one actually knows.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Chole, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, but you had a question in the chat.
Chile, you're very close, very close. So I had a friend who, sorry, I feel like has really good art. She has a really good looking pitch. She made a tweet about it. And I think from that tweet, she suddenly was like, "Oh, I have an agent now." And then not long after, she's like, "Never mind, I don't have one now because she's telling me that sci-fi just doesn't sell." And is that true?
It's true right now. Publishing is very cyclical. Um, so what sells now is not the same thing that's going to sell, in 5 years. But that in the traditional book publishing market, YA graphic novels that are sci-fi don't sell that much, and I don't know why. Everyone wants contemporary or romance or manga.
And no
So,
contemporary sci-fi romance manga? Like,
well, no, I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm not, it's just what it is. Like,
yeah.
people want things that'll sell, and that's what the consumers are doing. I mean, I don't know.
That's good to know. Thank you.
All right, Knack. Oh, are you here to ask the question? I can't.
Yes, I am here. Sorry.
Okay, okay, cool.
Um, you had noted about how like there had been a mention with the standalone open to more titles, and not having like mentioned what the next books would be about. I wondered if that extended to like if you were pitching just a true standalone, should you mention what other pitches you're shopping around if like in case they are interested in more from you?
So your agent is not necessarily going to want to do that. They're going to want to focus on the one that they think is sort of most saleable. And they will work with you to figure out what that is. I think in some cases, and I've had this as an editor, there'll be an author who has two pitches, and so the agent will send them both. And I think that's fine. And, the editor will either be like, I'm going to bring them both in, or maybe I'll decide which one I like the best. But I'm just not sure that helps, just to be like, well, if you don't like this, I have others, because you want to put your best foot forward and
Gotcha.
work with your agent to figure out what that is. You can send as many as you want to your agent.
Mhm.
Nice. Thank you.
All right, Robbie, are you able to ask your question about comp titles? Oh no, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna read the question then. How do I find good current comp titles? The problem with making the kind of book you wish existed is that I can't find anything like it that exists to compare it to. I'm also not super tapped into current kids' graphic novels, but nothing is new under the sun, so I'm determined to find something.
Okay, so a couple points. The first one is that editors and agents hear a lot. The thing that I'm trying to make is so unique that it's not like anything else. Okay, so figure out, like, of course it's not like anything else. Of course everything is different. But again, you're trying to find the books that your book will sit next to on the shelf, not the books that will be exactly the same as it. So again, if it's a contemporary friendship story, or say it's a story about, I don't know why I'm just thinking Raina books, but if it's a story about anxiety, maybe it'll sit like the OCD story someone was talking about. Maybe that sits next to guts. No, it's not about a stomach issue, but, and maybe the plot is completely different, but that will say to agents, editors, publishers, this is the audience. Like the same people who read this book will read my book. Of course, they don't want your book if it's exactly the same as that. Second, the secret to finding good comp titles is Amazon. Every editor uses Amazon as like a database because you go to a title, and then it's got that whole like people who bought this book also bought these. And then as an editor, you're clicking on those and seeing what they're about and then going and looking up their sales and being like, nope, not that one. And then looking up these sales. Yes, that's a good one. It sold 30,000. So I'm going to put that next to this book. So Amazon. Or you know what, you go into bookstores and you're like, hey, I like this book. What are other books like it? That might be good for me to read.
Mhm. All right. Santosh, you had a good question.
Hello. Yeah, I want to concentrate on my story and the drawing and the inks, and I would rather hand it out to a colorist. Is there an allowance for a colorist? Is that taken from the advance from the author or illustrator, or is there a separate allowance that's made with particular publishers, or does everyone just take out of the same advance?
So it depends on the publisher and on the deal. So if you know you're going to want a colorist and you want the publisher to pay for it, that's something that you're going to want to negotiate at the deal stage. So you can't just get the advance and then later be like, okay, we need another $10,000 to pay for a colorist. I know in some cases, authors are responsible for paying their own colorist. In some cases, the publisher will hire and pay a colorist. So it really depends on the situation, but that's something that you should be very upfront about if you're going to want a colorist.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Jake says he doesn't have a mic. So, what is not a graphic novel story? Sometimes I'll pitch an idea to my agent and she'll tell me it's an animated movie, not a graphic novel.
I don't I don't even know what to make of that one. I just super want to ask who the agent is.
I think I know who the agent is.
Wait, I can't see this in the chat. Oh, here we go. Um, is this Jake Parker?
I think so.
Okay, then I know
probably
who the
Judy
agent is
Hansen,
too.
right?
And I don't know. I don't know. I mean, things are a little personal. I will say that one thing that I've thought about before when I've had pitches that I think are maybe an animated movie and not a graphic novel is that they are, that term four quadrant, where you're trying to appeal to all these different audiences at once, and all the best animated movies do that. Sometimes if they feel too 4Q, then it feels like an animation and not like it's aimed at kids.
I completely agree. I see that a lot with people who are coming from the animation industry and then pitching into the book publishing industry. I feel like the culture and the expectations of the two industries are actually very, very different.
Yeah, for sure. Like a lot different.
Mhm.
I actually looked at one today that was really cute with great art, and I was like, "Oh, this feels animation-y," because it felt like it was appealing to a lot of audiences at once.
Mhm. Um, all right. I feel like we should probably wrap things up. Young, you had a last question. Do you want to ask your question? I'm gonna see if you're the last one or not.
Yeah, if there's time, I'll ask my question, but I am pitching a contemporary school friendship story. Very common. You mentioned in the talk that they're kind of oversaturated, that there's so many, it kind of undermines some of the sales. So if I'm pitching like, just another contemporary story, like how would I stand out from the rest?
Well, I mean, that's what you have to figure out. Like, what's your special sauce? What is the special twist? What makes, what is your storytelling vibe? What is it about? What happens in it? What is your art style? I mean, that's like you gotta figure that out, I'm afraid. Because yeah, we could look at there's so many of them and some of them do break out because they've got a special sauce.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. All right.
By the way, Jake Parker, I love your videos. Like SVSC Learn was like the first drawing series. So cool to see you. Okay, bye.
Shout out to Jake. All right. Well, Andrea, thank you for joining us. I always at the end of these events, I ask people to unmute yourself so we can all say goodnight to each other and also say thank you to Andrea for spending all this time. I think people found it super, super, super helpful, Andrea.
It was really fun. I love talking about this stuff.